living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
Getting a diagnosis of cancer brings up a wide range of thoughts and feelings, not only for the person who's been diagnosed, but also for family and loved ones. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm your host, Beth Brown. From diagnosis to treatment to life after battle, today we're talking about coping with cancer and everything that comes with it. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Joining us today is CEO Becky Franks of the Cancer Support Community Montana. And Becky, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we appreciate you being here. And let's start out by talking a little bit about your organization, which I understand is worldwide. How did it get started and what do you do?
Our organization is worldwide. It actually started in Santa Monica, California, when a gentleman's wife had cancer, Harold Benjamin, his wife Harriet. And so he understood that the cancer experience usually includes feeling a sense of loneliness and isolation. And that a way to offset that is to be able to be within community of people who understand what you're going through. So he started what was then called the Wellness Community. Meanwhile, in Montana, in Bozeman, we had two women who had young children, and they had cancer. And again, they felt very alone. And they wanted to be able to develop a support group so that they could talk with others who really could understand what they were saying. And in so doing, then they hired me, and we decided to join this national organization because of the many benefits that it provides to help us develop programs that really improve quality of life.
What a great organization. And so is that what people typically come to you for, is just that community, or what kind of resources do you offer?
So Cancer Support Community provides a variety of programs to help people manage the cancer experience from the time of diagnosis through treatment, through long-term survivorship, through end of life, if that's what happens with them. And it's really unique in that it helps people with all kinds of cancers, as opposed to just breast cancer or just one other kind of cancer. It also is unique in that it includes the entire family. We know that the first place that cancer metastasizes is in the family. Yeah. And it affects the whole family, those who are verbally saying that it's affecting them, and the little child who's sitting in the corner who says nothing. But we know it affects the whole family. And so we work with the entire family. And sometimes just the caregiver, because their cancer patient lives in New York or whatever, right? The other thing that's really unique is everything is offered free of charge and done in community. So we offer a few individual services like individual counseling, but most everything's in a group. Cooking classes in a group, yoga in a group, strength training, support groups, education. So we have our different pillars of programs, and that's all provided. So people can take what they need and walk away with the things they don't.
Very cool. And do you have virtual or online options for people who can't get there in person?
So we were kind of smart in that we started this thing called the virtual community 3 years before COVID. But just because you build it doesn't mean they'll come.
Sure.
Many people didn't use it very much. That is the one gift that we've had from COVID, is that now it's a thing. We now have 3 different Zoom accounts that are HIPAA protected to be able to manage all of our programs. And going forward, many of our programs will stay virtual and many will come back in person. And there will be a number of them that will also be a hybrid. For example, we've got in-person strength training. Doing that hybrid would be really difficult for our instructor. So we're going to have online strength training and in person. Our programs are available only to people in Montana, but all over Montana. So we've really been able to extend our reach. People in Choteau and Sydney and up in Havre and Missoula. So it's been a gift in that way and has been a real benefit to people during this difficult year.
That's great. Well, let's walk through some of the stages of a cancer diagnosis and start with somebody who has newly been diagnosed with cancer. What do people might not realize they need when it comes to a new diagnosis?
For a new diagnosis, many times it's a flood of information, and oftentimes with a language they don't understand. One of the questions we'll ask people is this your first time you've been touched by cancer? Or even a medical diagnosis, and many times it is. So words like metastatic, stage, and grade, and all the really long words of treatment and the type of cancer that they have is really, really hard to keep track of, especially when the physician keeps using your name in that sentence, right? I can talk about cancer, but when I talk about Becky Franks and cancer, well, that's a whole nother brain situation, right? So the biggest thing I think is the confusion. And even though really, really smart people are getting cancer, they may not understand, and they often need a third-party advocate to just help manage all the information. So that diagnosis time, it's very difficult. Many times the decisions are fast. So for the past week, many of us have had activities on our calendar. Maybe it's work, maybe it's going out biking with your family. Then next week, it's 8,000 medical appointments. And so everything else is off the table, just like that.
Gotcha, yeah. And what about that person's loved ones? How can they best be supportive when it comes to a new diagnosis?
They can be supportive by being aware of what the person's cancer needs. And really asking specifically what they need. What I can tell you what they don't need is someone to tell them exactly what to do. They're not an idiot, they just have cancer, right? But everyone feels anxious and able to manage that anxiety. They want to tell that person what to do and kind of boss them around. They're already being bossed around in a sense by the medical world. Now you have an appointment, now you're doing this, and now you're doing that, which is essential, right? So it is really important to listen and ask for what they need, and then also jump in when you know that it's really necessary. If someone just had surgery, don't call and ask if you should shovel. Just shovel. Just shovel the snow, right? So just do that. But I want to address something here too, because it's really important. They can be supportive, but they must be supported. So the person that gets left to the side is, I'm going to call up and say, how's the patient? How's the patient? How's the patient? And the caregiver is suffering already. And already they're thinking, my loved one's going to die, and I better not say that out loud.
Yeah.
Even if it's a stage 1, which that person will probably never die of, right? Mm-hmm. It's just such a lonely, lonely time. And that caregiver's time is going to go on forever. So if I'm your caregiver and you have shoulder surgery, that's going to be over in about 3 to 6 weeks, right? Cancer is going to be at least extremely difficult for 6 months.
Yeah.
At least. So that long haul, so to support the caregiver is what I'm also saying.
Great. Yeah, that's really good advice, Becky. Thank you. We do need to pause here and take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about how to cope and get through, for both the person diagnosed and family and loved ones, the cancer treatment. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're still talking with Becky Franks this morning, and now we're going to talk a little bit about treatment. We talked about diagnosis before the break, but now let's talk about what people can do, both the person diagnosed and family members, to help support and think about some of the things that come with treatment that maybe people don't typically think about. So can we start with a treatment plan and what that typically looks like, and how can someone be involved in coming up with their treatment plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So treatment involves usually can involve some surgery, chemotherapy, as well as radiation therapy. And chemotherapy can last anywhere from 3 to 6 months to longer. There are some nuances, immunotherapies and targeted therapies that is more of a pill than the infusions, and that's a whole different situation, but we'll talk about infusions more. In designing that program, many times it's a formula that fits your type of cancer. One of the things that's very unique now in the development of treatment that changes the way people think about treatment is you used to get treatment for breast cancer. Well, now there's tons of different types of breast cancer, and we can test your genetics, the genome of the cancer tumor itself. And from that, we can give you a treatment that fits you and your body. And so it is pretty specific by the time that comes down. However, what people want to think about is what their quality of life is. For example, there was a gentleman who played the piano. And this particular chemotherapy was going to give him neuropathy, which means pins and needles and you can't feel your fingers. But if he couldn't play the piano, that would be a done deal. So they did a different treatment. So thinking about, sometimes it's usually not that specific, but think about what's important to you at the end of the day. The other thing that's really important to remember, though, is most of us, when we think about chemotherapy, we think about the movie Brian's Song. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where you're out cold for the whole time chemotherapy is going on. And that's not true anymore. Out of all the treatments that have gone on and all the advances that we've had from treatment of cancer, the biggest one is the management of nausea, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of medicines, and you don't have to be down and out. You're not going to be down and out the entire time. You're going to have bad days, you're going to have good days. You're going to go to work, you're going to go meet with your friends, you're going to sleep on the couch. But it's not flat out. So that's the biggest misnomer about that.
So you talked about all the different possibilities when it comes to treatment, the side effects, the medications and everything. How does someone try to stay healthy and manage all of that? Do you have tips for kind of a state of mind and just staying upbeat and healthy during all the treatment possibilities?
You bet. There's a couple things. One is, I will say that statistically we know that participating in programs like the ones offered by Cancer Support Community really improve quality of life. Partly because there's two things that are work against people. One is that you should sit down for the entire treatment. That's not accurate. If you want to stay healthy, get up. Exercise as much as you can, as much as it feels comfortable doing so. So I'll tell caregivers, have her get her own coffee, right? Get up, move around, exercise, keep that going. It is night and day how that will make you feel. The second thing is keep upbeat. No, don't keep upbeat. I mean, a positive attitude, reframing the chemotherapy is not poison. It's actually good medicine that's going to help me be better. That's a great mind shift. But if you're forced to be positive all the time, you're going to really feel more and more dread inside. And we see this particularly with 30s and 40s-year-olds. And there's about 25%, and there's a lot of people who are young who get cancer. And their friends are like, you got this, come on, you look so good, you're so positive. And inside they're just dying more and more and more because it's just so painful. You have to talk about it. Having cancer is no fun. And if you live in no fun, then that's miserable. But if you pretend like it's all sunny and roses, it's not. So you have to have a place to talk about that.
So let's talk a little bit about, other than the health part, how much people's lives change, the person who's being diagnosed and the family. What are your tips there for adjusting to all the changes that happen with a cancer diagnosis?
The biggest thing that happens is, again, your life is just moved from here to here. And so you need to be able to figure out that and put it in your brain. The other thing is most people are completely healthy until the day they're diagnosed with cancer. There's some people that's like, yeah, I've got symptoms and something's wrong. But most people are completely fine until the doctor says, you got cancer. Like, what? And so all of a sudden you're a sick person, right? And so being able to figure out how to frame that in your brain, and also be able to continue to have a life of someone with cancer versus leading your life as cancer, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Like one thing people will do is quit working. And I always try to help them think about that really carefully first. Because when you work, and you're at work, I'm at work, right? It's part of who we are. It's what we do. It's clever. It's fun to work. And all of a sudden, all you do is cancer. That's a whole life shift that you might not want. Mm-hmm. And now you've got nothing else to talk about except your cancer. So keeping things engaged in your life, continuing to see your friends. optimizing your well-being when you have it, and continuing to exercise and find ways to take care of yourself, both emotionally, maybe through meditation. One more thing I do want to share too is the more you can stay present, the better. We do a lot of meditative things because the first thing you do is, I'm diagnosed today, treatment, dying. What am I going to do with my kids? How am I ever going to see blah, 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 right? Mm-hmm. Stay present.
Okay,
great. As much as you can, stay present.
Great, Becky, thank you. It is time to take another break, but when we come back, usually when you fight and beat cancer, that's a time for celebration. But getting back to a normal life post-cancer is not always that easy. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Don't go away. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. We're talking with Becky Franks about all things that come along with a cancer diagnosis. Now we're going to talk about life after cancer a little bit. Obviously, beating cancer, it's a victory, but I know some things can be very different after people have fought that fight. So can you talk a little bit about, let's start with health first. How can a person's health change after they've fought cancer?
One of the things that's wonderful about treatment is that it makes the cancer go away. It's really effective. But it affects your body significantly. You may be leaving treatment most likely with a lot of fatigue, like hard to get off the sofa fatigue, pain, perhaps, foggy brain, neuropathy in the hands and feet. So lots of things. And an overwhelming amount of anxiety and isolation. When you leave treatment, it's super exciting, and you ring the bell and you throw a party and you have balloons and cake, and it's all really great time for about a minute. And then everyone leaves, and the doctors aren't there all the time to take care of you. You've been seeing them like daily, weekly, and your friends quit bringing casseroles, probably for the good. And so then there you are alone. And your friends are really tired of talking about cancer. I know this. My mom had cancer. I was super tired of it, before I knew what I know now. But the person with cancer has changed forever. And one of the things that happens is when you're actively in treatment, the cancer is actively going away. And so when you're done, do you just sit there and wait for it to come back? Like, what does that feel like? Mm-hmm. And how much anxiety builds up to that? And so one of the biggest things you can do is take control of your life. What can I control? I can exercise. I can eat well. I can meditate. Many people who are done with cancer treatment will look at their job and go, I kind of like this job, and I know my life now is limited. I'm not going to live forever. Or I don't like you. I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. I'm going to be more selective about my time. I'm going to fill my bucket list. I know one cancer survivor, a caregiver who is like constantly out of town. He's like, living with a cancer survivor can be a lot of work because there's no, the ground doesn't get too soft underneath our feet or on a run.
So you talked about the fear of the cancer coming back. Let's talk about that a little bit more, because that can probably be overwhelming for different people depending on how controlling that fear can feel. What are some coping skills or some management skills that you can offer for folks who are just so fearful of that cancer returning?
So it is a common fear for most people. And so first of all, understand that you're not alone in that. You're not crazy. The second thing is find things in your life that you can control. I can't control whether there's funny cells growing inside my body, but I can exercise and I can eat well and I can take care of myself. And by having that sense of control, because part of what cancer does is it makes you feel like your life is out of your control, right? So if I can gather control in different ways, it really helps. The other thing, again, stay present, just like with the treatment time, is today I know that my scan is clear. That's what I know today. I'm going to stick with that story until further notice. And then sometimes we also add in the trust. We know that cancer research is changing dramatically. Mm-hmm. Immunotherapies and targeted therapies are coming through. What did you do the first time you found out you had cancer? Well, I went through the treatment. Okay, what are you going to do if it comes back? I'll go through the treatment again. And it might even be better. That's right. For every year that goes by, there might be another treatment that comes in. So put faith in that. Put faith in your capability to manage it. And then if it happens, you'll do it. But for today, get up, exercise, go to work, and have kale for lunch and a cookie for dinner.
There you go. That's great. It's a good message of hope and resilience too, which I think is huge. Let's talk about the caregiver again. You know, a couple years ago, we had a guest on who had survived cancer, and her partner had been a rock through all of treatment and everything. And then it was like, oh, it's over. I don't have to be this rock anymore. And she really struggled. She kind of fell apart with that because she didn't know how to be anymore other than that support that she had been for so long. Can you talk about what caregivers can do post fighting cancer and how they can stay healthy mentally, physically?
So as a caregiver during the treatment, make sure that you are holding on to things that are incredibly important to you. If you're in a book club, if possible, stay in that book club. You need to do some self-care and then also have a life. If you turn your cancer patient loved one into your life, then when cancer's over, they're tired of you kind of hovering on them, right? You need to go get a life besides them. And because you sitting and worrying about them is going to be too much, right? So stay present in the relationship, that you're the caregiver and they're the cancer patient. The second thing is to be able to, again, talk about it. That's where the support groups are just so helpful. People think that support groups, we sit in a circle and just cry all the time. And that is absolutely not the case. There's room for tears. There's room for laughter, but there's room for connection and to say all that stuff that's in your brain and get it out your mouth so it doesn't have to just struggle and suffer inside you, if that makes sense. So having someone to talk about your real feelings. And it's okay, caregivers, to say, this sucks. This is really hard. It's every day I've done nothing but take care of my loved one. And all our friends are like, how's the patient? Well, what about me? Mm-hmm. I got a lot going on. I'm in charge of all the bills. I got to take care of the kids. I'm working extra just to get the money. We haven't talked about financial toxicity, right? And I'm supposed to be upbeat all the time and want to go get you 5 more cups of coffee. Really? It's a lot. Mm-hmm. Acknowledging that is really important.
Okay, great. Becky, that's our time. Thank you so much for being with us today. This was great information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you'll come back and see us again next week. Until then, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life. Have a great week, everybody.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health in partnership with AARP Montana. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the Healthy Living for Life logo. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.